Hello and welcome to Ode to Games. I'm Kevin Valine, joined alongside Logan Plant. How you doing, Logan?
Doing all right. Excited about some things this week and devastated about some others, which we'll get into.
We've got some news this week. Zach is also here. Zach Ross, how you doing, Zach?
I'm doing good. It's good to be back.
Oh
Missed a
yeah,
week.
you were out last week. You are back. It's good to
I am.
good to have
I
the
am
full
back.
crew back.
I
Do
missed
you like
it.
the new
last
Mario Kart track, Zach?
I do. I like them a lot. What's the one that's really good? I forgot what
Toad
it's
Circuit.
called. No,
Ninja Hideaway?
that's that one. Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Toad Circuit is your favorite, right? That one
No, that
is
was bad.
objectively
It's the
the
worst.
best. The best
If
track.
you missed
in the
last
game.
week's show, Kevin and I went on for like 20 minutes about the DLC, and about half of it was bashing Toad Circuit.
That's crazy.
And the
I
rest
didn't
of us
think it
being like,
I didn't
this
think
is
it was
solid.
that bad. I thought there were some really good ones, and then a lot of a few obviously lower tier ones. Like I was a little disappointed in Choco Mountain because my expectations for that one were higher. But Coconut
too.
Mall and Ninja Hideaway and the other ones from the mobile game were
The
really
tour
good.
tracks, yeah.
Yeah, the tour tracks are great.
Not Ninja Hideaway. Have they fixed that yet? Or is that still
No, I don't think they have. Yeah, I think it still is not labeled as a tour track, which is
it's
bizarre.
still just a track?
Uh-huh.
It's the Mario Kart 8 track. Another quick plug for our YouTube page. OTGames.com has our Games on YouTube.
Whoa.
OTGames YouTube has the video version of the podcast. Another quick plug because we usually do that at the end of the show, and it's a long show, so sometimes you don't make it all the way to the end. So if you want to check out the video version, it's on our YouTube page at OTGames. Ready to talk about some Kirby? Logan,
Kirby.
we have played up to about the same spot, the start of the fourth area. What are your thoughts so far on Kirby and the Forgotten Land? It's out.
Yeah, first 3D Kirby ever, and boy, did it really make a nice transition from 2D to 3D. I think that this game is great, and I think that it really retains a lot of what makes what stands out about the good 2D Kirby games, because there's a lot of mediocre ones, but when you think of like what makes a good Kirby game, really good collectibles, creative levels, some fun, cute boss fights. This game has all of that. Fun copy abilities too. The mouthful mode is as great as I think we all hoped it would be. It's a ton of fun to take over these everyday objects and have Kirby just like strap himself over them rather than absorbing them and taking over their powers. So yeah, I think it's really great. I really like the collectibles, finding all the different Waddle Dees. There's some that are just hidden in different levels, and then some that you have to get by completing different objectives per level, which aren't actually revealed to you until you actually come across them yourself or until you beat the level. So a lot of backtracking and replayability value there. But overall, I think it's really fun. It's really charming. It's a great 3D platformer. Definitely takes from the likes of Super Mario 3D Land, 3D World, and Sackboy. It's another platformer in that genre. So I'm having a really good time with it so far.
Yeah, I'm having a really good time too. This is only my third Kirby game after both of them on Wii, Kirby's Epic Yarn and then Return to Dreamland. So I don't have too much experience with Kirby games, but I've been having a lot of fun. It feels like Kirby has been a 3D platform before with how well they nailed a lot of these levels. I really like the motifs of the levels of this forgotten world, of this desolate place, and they really do a lot with that idea and make all of these different locations. I think that was a really good idea because it always makes these locations very interesting. It's not just like, oh, here's the tropical area, or here's the ice area, or here's the plains area. It always has something to do with that old world sprinkled in, and it makes it so all of the levels within a certain area, even though they have a similar style with their overall area, do feel unique and different. And it's always fun to explore each of the different levels in these separate worlds. So that's been really cool to me.
Yeah, it's very Tropical Freeze in that way, right? Like when Zach and I just played Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze earlier this year, I remarked at how fun the different twists are on the different worlds, like the jungle level that's this like juice factory, and to go through all the stages of producing these like popsicles basically. And Kirby gives off a lot of similar vibes to that in creativity, where it is like, oh, you're in the grass area, but you're in like these overgrown buildings, right? People making the Last of Us Kirby comparisons. No, it's not really like that at all, but I get the joke. But it is super fun just going through these different twists, because at this point, if you've played Mario, Yoshi, Kirby, DK, any of these Nintendo platformers, they do often really follow kind of the same theme of like jungle, desert, plains, snow, water. But to see a twist on those has been a lot of fun. The third world specifically, which I just wrapped up today, was really my favorite. I like a lot of the things they did with that third world, and it's kind of, there's some amusement park things you go through that are just super cool and unique. So yeah, I'm really digging the world design too. You really never know what's going to come up in the next one.
Yeah, and I think that the mouthful mode really really adds a lot to the game. The power ups are great, and I love that you can upgrade them, and some of them have multiple upgrades to do, and it's always fun to collect the
Oh,
upgrade
they do.
blueprints. And
Some go to a stage 3. I didn't know
yes,
that yet.
I've had one go to a stage 3, so I don't know about all of
Cool.
them, but some of them do, and there's some really cool upgrades that you get as you go along. Just in general, with upgrades and upgrading the town and collecting things, I always appreciate when games give you reasons to collect things. Like, you have Mario games sometimes where it's like, oh, collect all these coins and you'll get an extra life, and maybe the
Hmm.
extra life doesn't really matter because you have more than you need. But here, you're using the coins for the shop to upgrade your weapons, or you're using it for the gotcha machines to get the little toys. And with the Waddle Dees, you don't have to collect all of them to get through the levels. It's a pretty low bar to get through the uh, the boss areas, but the more
Yeah,
that
like
you
would
collect,
you even just completing the levels you get 3? Could you even physically not get enough to
I
open
don't
the
think
boss
so.
gate?
I think you probably could just completing the levels and not doing any of the side
Yeah.
objectives. But if you go for all of the Waddle Dees, you can upgrade the town and create new buildings in the town and things to do. And you'll get to that eventually if you're not doing all of them. But the more you
Mhm.
collect, the faster that's going to happen. And I always appreciate in games when they give you a reason to collect the things, then it's not just like, oh, collect it because it checks a box off on your little checklist. It's like, oh, you need to collect it because it does something, it gives you something in game.
Yeah, and unlocking the different services in Waddle Dee Town is pretty simple. It's not like you're actually rebuilding a town or making any decisions like that, but it is fun after you complete a world to head back to the hub area. And it's like, oh, the boss arena is here. Oh, you opened the cafe, which has a sub game, which Kirby games often have really fun sub games
Hmm.
embedded within. And so I really like that part about it. And then also sprinkled throughout the overworld, the world map, are these little challenges that you do where you need to earn the crystals that are the currency to upgrade the copy abilities. And these are super cool because it's really like the flood levels or the floodless levels in Super Mario Sunshine, like where it is just these speed run platforming based levels that look a lot different. Like it's not this expansive overworld Kirby's roaming in. It's like these platforms in the sky from an isometric angle, and there's speed run challenges for you to check off. You can't just complete it, get to the end, grab the crystal. But then for completionists, there's these time challenges. They want you to beat it in 30 seconds or less, or a minute or less. And those are hard. Those
Some
are
of them
really
are
hard to do.
brutal.
Yeah, and in
Even
a
some of
game
the
that's
early
otherwise
ones.
very easy, I'm playing on wild mode, which is hard difficulty, and I have yet to die.
Yeah, same.
It's really fun to have these challenge modes that you can go in, and it's like, all right, it's the sword copy ability challenge, and it really pushes the sword ability to its limits. Or the cutter one is super cool. The cutter is the boomerang that you can throw out and hold, and there's these puzzles where you throw it out, you hold it there, and then you have to move where Kirby is, so it comes back to you the right direction to hit a switch or an enemy that was blocking the path forward. So those have been a super nice thing. I didn't even know were in the game based on the pre-release coverage that I saw. So that's been a super fun surprise, having these little mini Kirby speedrunning challenges to try to master.
Yeah, and I think that the mouthful mode and the weapon upgrades really help those out because all of them are different. They're all using a different mouthful mode or a different power up slash version of the power up. So they're always different and they always do something really clever with the style of power up. Each power up has its own specific thing that they can do. And they've done a good job of crafting different challenges that really utilize each of the power ups and teach you how they work. Like something like,
Mhm.
um, oh, with the cutter that where you can hold it. Until I did the challenge, I don't think I knew that you could do that. So it's a fun way
Mhm.
to teach the player how these different power-ups work and to have them do some of these challenges that can be kind of brutal if you're going for the actual time. Now, I've heard that for the actual completion number of the 100%, you don't need to do that, which is nice because some of them are pretty brutal, but they do give you
Mhm.
extra coins. And I've heard that you do need a lot of coins for the gotcha machine at the end if you want to go for 100%. So there is, a decent incentive to go for as many of the time trials as you can and check those off.
Yeah, and there's a couple of quality life things I wanted to talk about too that have been super improved, both from the Kirby genre, the Kirby series, and just the 3D platforming genre. And that is, in like Super Mario 3D World and in this game, there are these sections that once you go through them, you cannot backtrack. Like the Plessy sections in Super Mario 3D World, where you're riding on the back of this dinosaur. Once you're at the bottom of the hill, you can't go back. You have to complete the level and then do it again. Kirby has a lot of these too, whether it's like a car driving thing or a gliding through the air thing. And if you miss a collectible along the way, once you get to the end of that section, there's a blue warp star that says retry. And you could just hop on that and it warps you back to the start of just that specific section. So if like sometimes these are really fast and you're just zooming along on this path and you'll see a Waddle Dee and not be able to get to it in time. So then you could just instantly be like, all right, I'm going to do that whole section again and grab the Waddle Dee this time. And it's just a really nice thing where if that's the one thing you miss in the level, you don't have to run back through the entire thing just to get to that point to go and grab it, which I really appreciated.
Yeah, that was nice. Some of them have time trial components depending on some of the mouthful modes that you do. And when you're trying to hit a certain time, it's really nice to be like, I missed that time. I can instantly go back and try it again. It's not like, oh, well, time to finish the level, come back in, get my one shot at it. If I don't get it that time, I have to do the whole level again. For those sections, it's really helpful to have, and for collectibles too.
But then something that I guess kind of bothers me in the same vein, it's like you have that, but then after you complete a level, there's like usually 3 to 4 additional challenges per level for Waddle Dees. And if you don't even discover what multiple of them are, the game only reveals to you what one of them is. It doesn't reveal to you what both of them are, which really bugs me because it's like, I think after completing the level, you should tell me what I need to do to 100% it. I shouldn't have to go through again for it to unlock the second question mark that I don't know what it is. So that's something where it was really friendly in letting me retry challenges, making me run through a level multiple times just to see all the hidden things I have to accomplish. I'm not super big on.
Yeah, I can see that. I guess it hasn't super rubbed me the wrong way with most levels. It's usually only one that I miss, but there are some where I have missed multiple and I have to run back through. I mean that gives me another chance to find it organically, but there are times where it's like, yeah, it would have been
Yeah.
nice to just know some of this stuff ahead of time when I have beaten the level already. But I do really appreciate that they don't show you these things before you go into the level, because there are some
I do
times
too.
where you just like randomly stumble across what the challenge was. It's like, oh, that was cool. Or, but they do eventually show it to you. It's not like they're always like that. They will show it to you, maybe just a little bit too slow for some people if they're not discovering any of them within the level.
Yeah, and it just goes back to, I think, the idea of organic discovery we've been talking about a lot this year, just based on some of the big games that have been coming out. And yeah, this is like that too, where it's like, all right, I know there's 3 challenges. I don't know what they are. Let me just mess around with every little corner of this level to see what it is. And there are some really fun ones. Sometimes they're really simple, but then sometimes they're more fun, like gathering up baby ducklings to return to the mama. I really enjoyed that one, and a couple other things like that. And then sometimes at the end of the level, it's like, go through this section without getting hit. And you're like, oh, I got hit once, so I have to go and redo that level. But I really like the challenges, and it's just another masterful example of Nintendo games being super easy to get through, just point A to B, but then really fun for older players like us to really master everything and see everything there is to see.
It's fun to do the challenges with the boss fights too, because usually at least one of them will require you to use one of the power-ups that they provide. You can go in with whatever power-up you want, but usually they'll force you to use a certain power-up. And it's, some of the power-ups aren't as good as others, so it can be kind of annoying.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it does get you using those other power-ups, and it gets you fighting with different power-ups, and it keeps things fresh. And you have to change up strategies a little bit if you're swapping to a different power-up.
Dude, I'll have to post the video to Twitter, but I roasted the third boss because you get the crash ability in the third world, which if you haven't played Kirby, it's just the ability that explodes literally everything on the screen.
Oh yeah.
And then I went and upgraded it instantly. I had to grind some coins and grind some star pieces because they know that one's OP. So it took me a while to get enough to upgrade that one. And then I equipped it and I just ran into the third boss. I used it right as the fight started. It depleted their health bar from 100% to like 8%. And then I just like whacked on it a few more times and then it was done.
So that's
it was like
that's
a
the
15-second process.
because you can just go in and get the power up for free from the shop before you go into the boss fights.
Yeah, so that was super fun. The one thing I will say, if you've played previous Kirby games, this one by far has the lowest number of copy abilities I've seen in a really long time. There's only like 12 main ones, but that's not including the upgrades or mouthful mode. So usually though, like Robobot has like 20 or 25, and Squeak Squad on DS had like 25 to 30. Like there's definitely fewer, and some classic ones are missing, but I think that is because they put a bigger emphasis on the upgrade path and mouthful mode. So it's not a negative for me. It's just something I noticed as someone who's played this entire series.
For someone who hasn't, it doesn't. I don't think it's too big of an issue. I think that
Mhm.
that mouthful mode really helps freshen things up, and doing the upgrades with the abilities means that abilities will feel different as you upgrade them, and they'll add
Mhm.
different things, so it doesn't feel like you're just using the exact same power up throughout the entire game. They usually have some little difference that they add in.
Yeah, which I think was really smart, because I think one of the biggest challenges with moving to 3D for Kirby was, how do you keep these abilities varied? Because if you go to the pause menu of a 2D Kirby game and you look through the pages of different things you can do with the copy abilities, it's like, oh, hold right and press the attack button, hold up and press the attack button. In a 3D landscape, you don't have those directional inputs as cleanly. And so I was always wondering, how are they going to make them different? And the short answer is they're very much simplified. There's basically a ground move and an air move for all your copy abilities now, but the upgrade path is what makes them different. It's like, oh, but then I upgrade this and it does completely different things than what it did before. So I think it's a smart workaround to transition Kirby from 2D to 3D. That it was just really creative of them to think of that, because just like the first time you get the sword ability, there's like combos you can't do anymore that you used to be able to do to just be an absolute god in the old Kirby games, and now it's mostly just slashing. But the upgrading is really fun, and cool to see the different costumes he gets as you upgrade these things along.
Yeah, there's some very fun costumes even that I've unlocked through just the first 3 areas, so that's been fun. I will say, uh, performance wise, the pop in and characters moving at 5 frames a second when you're a little ways away from them is kind of
Yeah,
noticeable, more than I
yeah.
think it should be. For example, in Waddle Dee Town, there is a lookout point where you're like, oh, I can look out and see the entire town. And then you look down and there's the Waddle Dees watering flowers at like 5 frames a second, like
They're
right
really waddling.
there. And so it's like, it's a lot more noticeable than it should be, especially when you go to a place where it's like, I'm supposed to be observing this entire town, and these characters are moving very noticeably at 5 frames a second. And that happens
Mhm.
within gameplay as well, when you're at the start of kind of a long pathway and you look forward and there's enemies, and it's a little noticeable. It's nothing deal breaking or anything, but you will definitely notice that the frame rate
Absolutely.
kind of drops on some of the enemies when they're far away, and pop in happens too.
Also, not a deal breaker. The soundtrack is not super standout to me. A lot of the themes are just variations on the main theme. And then, I mean, I can't help but compare this game to 3D World, because it just does feel so similar to that. And then each world basically only has one song. Like there's 4 main levels in each world, and 3 of them will probably use the same song, and then one of them will have a special song. And it's like, the levels are long too. They're pretty
Yeah.
lengthy. Like there's a lot to do in these, which is fun. But then just the music has been just kind of on a loop and not a super standout part of this for me, which also isn't a deal breaker. It's just Kirby has had some really good soundtracks, but I don't think this one is really among the best of them.
Yeah, it was all right for me. I think a lot of them kind of just blended into the background. Nothing,
Hmm.
nothing that offended
I
me
think
or
it's
anything
fine.
like
No,
that.
it's not Yoshi's
Um,
New Island. It is not Yoshi's New Island at all. It's a fine soundtrack. It's just not outstanding like some other platformers on Switch. Like Tropical Freeze, 3D World are two of the
yeah,
greatest soundtracks for a platformer ever. And this just isn't quite up to that level.
I definitely noticed it in the third area. The first two, I don't think it really dawned on me. Maybe they swapped it up enough. But something about the third area and the third area's music, where I walked into like the third level, I'm like, oh, they're using this song again. All
Hmm.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not that it's terrible, but yeah, a little bit more variety would have been nice. But overall, I'm having a great time with it, and there's a lot to do. Not only are the levels, quite long, but I've had it for a couple of days and put in a lot of hours, and I'm still only like 35% done trying to do everything.
Hmm.
But there's a lot to do, along with the main levels, trying to get all of the Waddle Dees in the level, doing the side challenges, upgrading all of your weapons, doing the things in Waddle Dee Town, collecting everything. Like there's a lot in this game. And from what I heard, one of the big complaints from Star Allies was there was just not a whole lot to do.
Yeah, it's terrible.
So it's nice here that there is a lot to do and a lot to spend time doing, and that it all feels worthwhile and fun to do.
Yeah, just to lay it out really quick, Star Allies. So you know how Forgotten Land has the gotcha system, where in every level there are gotcha orbs, gotcha capsules you can find, and then it unlocks a random one. But that's in addition to all the Waddle Dee activities. In Star Allies, it's just the random drop collectibles. So there's like not even a specific thing to find in each level. So there's like no reason to go back to like 90% of the levels in the game. You just find the one to farm puzzle pieces, and then that's it. So it's there's not nearly as much to do in that game. But yeah, this game is really great. I'm really happy with the transition to 3D and just how true it still feels to Kirby. Like it's got all the language of Kirby there. Like if it's a yellow star door, it's the main path. If it's an orange star door, it's a little side room to do. It just has all of the same language. The boss fight, the boss bars, sucking up the huge boss after you defeat it to get a power that you know you'll need for a collectible in the next room. Like it's just all there. So yeah, it's really great. And I think that the jump from 2D to 3D will bring a lot of people in. So
I think it already has.
It's great. Yeah, it brought you in. You've only played a couple before, and here you are.
Yeah, and that seems to be how a lot of this goes. You move something from 2D to 3D, and it brings in a whole new audience of people. And I think it's happening the same way with Kirby. It also helps that it's on the Switch, and people are buying games on the Switch at a ridiculous rate. But I also feel like for some people, Kirby may have gotten stale, or it's just like, oh, it's another 2D game. But you look at this and it looks completely different, and they're really trying something new. And I think that's going to bring a lot of people either back in who haven't played it in a while, or people who haven't even given Kirby a shot before.
Yeah. So. Zach, any questions about Kirby before we move on?
Well, I did get the chance to play the demo, so I did get a little bit of hands-on experience with it, the first level, or the first couple levels, and the first boss. Yeah, you guys laid it out pretty well. It almost sucked me in, but there's so much going on right now that
fair.
I don't know if I'm gonna play it, but I would like to in the future. Yeah, definitely sounds like a lot of fun, and yeah, I'm not surprised that this thing is selling because it is on the Switch, and the Switch will sell anything.
It's number one on Amazon for like a week. Like it's number one
on
eShop.
Not surprising. Yep, it'll be that way. Yeah.
Last thing I want to end on, super weird thing. In Kirby gets a house in Waddle Dee Town, like as one of the first upgrades you get, and there you can admire your gotcha collection, and like Kirby's like huge in the background staring at this toy, and it is freaking adorable. But then there's a little book over to the side in his room, and it's like reflecting on past adventures, and it's like Kirby games always have this, like a little museum dedicated to Kirby's history. Like Star Allies, the puzzles you were building were key art for old Kirby games. But the only games featured in here are ones from like 2013 and on. And I'm like, like Kirby Fighters 2 is in there. Like all the random free-to-play spin-offs, like the 3DS D2D drum game is in there. But that's it. It's just like everything from the last 10 years is in there. Nothing in the 20 years prior to that. I just thought that was really weird.
Yeah, I opened that up too. I'm like, wow, this is a very interesting collection of games to be showcasing for a new player. It's like, oh, I guess Kirby started on the 3DS. Or
yeah, because it's like not even games you can buy for much longer. Like we're shutting down the 3DS shop, and it's like you can still buy Kirby Triple Deluxe. And it's like, why is that here?
You can admire a picture of them here. You can admire the picture and a little blurb about them.
Yeah, I don't know if this is the best Kirby of all time yet. Like the Switch has a history of pumping out. I still think I love Return to Dreamland, the one that I played with Kevin on Wii. I think that game is outstanding 2D platformer. And then Robobot also on 3DS is outstanding, but it's up there. It's definitely one of the best Kirby games. It's not like Star Allies, which was pretty throwaway pretty instantly. This is a really good one that you should check out if you like platformers like Kirby or just think it looks good from the trailers.
Yeah, from what you see in the trailers, or if you played the demo, it's just more of that. And has not let me down so far. It's a lot of fun. And I love the mouthful mode. Some of the things they do with that are either really stupid or really clever, but it's always fun. And I appreciate that. All right. Want to get into the news for this week?
I don't want to. I don't want to get into the news, Kevin. Because I'm very sad.
I think we have to do it.
Yeah, let's get into it. All right. Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild 2 delayed to 2023. Oh, what a horrible way to wake up on, what was this, Wednesday morning? Tuesday morning? Yeah, Wednesday morning, wake up. I have text from like 4 different people that's like, Zelda delayed. I'm like, oh, you've got to be kidding me. Please tell me I'm still sleeping. I had a dream about them shutting down the 3DS eShop that I talked about on the show. Please let this be that moment, but it's not. Zelda Breath of the Wild delayed to spring of 2023. It originally was targeting a sometime in 2022 date. Last E3, Eiji Aonuma said, we're targeting 2022. Seemed a little flimsy at the time, and only 9 months later, we learned that it has been delayed. Aonuma said, in order to make this game's experience something special, the entire development team is continuing to work diligently on this game, so please wait a while longer. They also talked about, as previously announced, the adventure in this sequel will take place not just on the ground as in the previous game, but also in the skies above. However, the expanded world goes beyond that, and there will be an even wider variety of features you can enjoy, including new encounters and new gameplay elements. Ended off with a very brief clip of new footage, very short. We
People
see
have been going
Link,
crazy on that.
and I gotta say, this footage visually looks a lot better than Breath of the Wild 1. Like, you can tell this is not a Wii U game anymore. It is for the Switch, and it looks good. Nintendo's also using some new NVIDIA tech to make their games appear closer to 4K while still kind of masking that under a lower resolution, and this game's taking advantage of that too. But then we see Link holding a shattered Master Sword also. We see that his hand is corrupted, as we've seen in previous trailers. We get a good look at his front in the outfit that we saw in the E3 trailer last year, so some brief teaser footage, and the internet just went nuts over that 3 new seconds of footage that we got. There's a lot to dive into, I think, with this delay. It's a huge topic for Nintendo's 2022. First off, I want to start with, do you guys still think this is the big E3 game for Nintendo, or is it going to be even longer than a few months till we see this game again? Kev, we'll start with you.
Ooh, I hadn't thought about that. I guess depends on how late into spring they're planning for it to come out. If it's like tail end of spring that it'll come out, like let's say May of 2023, then that would be a pretty long gap in between. But I think that they probably have to show something. You know, it's we haven't seen very much since that trailer. How long ago was that main like reveal trailer of everything?
That was last June. That was E3 21.
Yeah.
I mean, it's going to be a calendar year at that point. I think that they'll show something. I don't know if it'll be completely, blowing the doors off and be like, here's everything, because I feel like that's something that you usually save for within 3 or 4 months, ideally.
I still don't even have a name.
Yeah. So I feel like it'll be there, but maybe it won't be as high profile as it would have been if they were targeting holiday 2022. And then maybe they do kind of its own show in the fall or winter to gear up for the spring launch. I do think it'll be there, though.
Yeah, that's kind of what I think. I'm not confident that it's going to be at E3, but I definitely think it's going to get its own direct or spotlight in the fall. Probably with a name reveal, some gameplay, all that good stuff. Much more content since it did get pushed out to spring. I don't know. It just seems so far out.
Yeah, so this is literally identical to what happened with Breath of the Wild 1. It is the same. It was supposed to come out in 2016. Then in April, they announced, hey, it's delayed to 2017. It's also coming out on NX, and it's going to be the only game we talk about at E3 2016. And then E3 2016 came. We got a trailer, we got a name reveal, and a ton of gameplay. But Nintendo was in a very different place in 2016. It is literally the only game they had. Their big fall game that year, Paper Mario Color Splash. Not something you blow the doors off with at E3. So their entire digital showcase was exclusively Zelda that year. And then it ended up coming out in the spring, next March of 2017. So I think it'll be there. I think we'll get a name reveal at E3. I think it'll still be a big presence for them. But they've got such a stacked year still. They've got a lot that's coming out still after June that we know about. Pokemon Gen 9 is this year. It is now the big fall game, as we discussed when it was announced. And they probably got some stuff we don't even know about coming out. And I'm sure we'll see Wind Waker Twilight Princess at E3 for an October release. I'll just say that now. It's coming out this year. And then, just saying it, March 3rd is a Friday next year. They could pull a little, make March 3rd really Breath of the Wild Day and launch its sequel on the same day, on its 6th anniversary, which I think would be something pretty special if they could pull that off.
That would be cool. God, 6 years? Oh, it'll be 6 years at that point. God, how's it been 6 years?
Yeah. But I also want to talk about just the kind of quotes from Aonuma saying that the expanded world goes beyond that, taking speaking of the ground and the sky. And this is just I love that, just imagining the inner workings of the Zelda team, just having this idea. This game started out as DLC for Breath of the Wild and has grown into a sequel that's taking longer to develop than the original. Like we are going to be 6 years out after the original when this comes out. It just seems that they had a ton of new ideas and ran with them. I'm hoping that the game world expanding beyond that means dungeons, but I'm wondering if you guys have any ideas or insight into what else this quote from Aonuma could mean.
I mean, I feel like the thought from that original trailer was the underground, because that's kind of where everything started for this sequel when they showed it off for the first time, was these underground catacombs. And my first thought when I hear like, oh, it's beyond just the sky and the sky that we've shown off and the land that you already played in Breath of the Wild 1, my assumption would be we're going underground and there's going to be, you know, catacombs and maybe dungeons spread throughout the world, and that opens up the area a lot without having to necessarily increase the size of the main map. I think it'd be a great idea to have the sky and the underground to really change things up, and you're going through 3 different areas to keep things fresh, along with the main area that you've already been exploring for the past 5 years.
Yeah, definitely makes it seem that way with the ability it showed off. I think Link was able to like go through, like phase through the ground to vertically ascend. Maybe he could, I don't know if it showed him using it to go underground, but I think it would make sense for that ability to go the other way around. So I think, having a more vertical play space and not just the same high rule that Link has been going through this whole time would be pretty great. And definitely bring back the old dungeon system, because the Divine Beast just didn't really do it for me.
Yeah, it's just this. I am even more excited for this game. I think that Nintendo wasn't ever just going to make like, oh, it's just Breath of the Wild 2 where you just do the exact same things you did before. I think that like you look at Ocarina of Time to Majora's Mask, and Ocarina of Time was that groundbreaking at the time, and then they did something entirely different. And I don't love that game, as you know, but I love the idea of taking this just beloved original groundbreaking entry and doing something totally crazy.
I think they're a lot more equipped to pull off their crazy ideas now than they were back then, with the rush development time that they had to do for Majora's Mask. And they're taking 6 years on this. It's probably going to be a lot better.
Taking a lot more time with this one.
Yeah, I cannot wait. It was a gut punch though for me to wake up to this news. You guys know this is my most anticipated game right now, and just to get this delay, it hurt, but it didn't hurt like Breath of the Wild's delay did, because it got delayed like 3 times. It didn't hurt like those did, because that was the light at the end of the tunnel for Nintendo, as we've talked about. Like, this is what we're holding out for as Wii U owners. Like, it's all going to be worth it when Zelda comes out. But we're in such a better place now. Like, we're playing an outstanding Kirby game right now. And like we've said, there's so much coming out this year that when fall rolls around, we won't feel the absence of Zelda. We won't be like, man, there's nothing here right now. I think that the Switch is going to have an outstanding year. And I mean, I just hope it hits spring 2023 now, because sometimes these games get delayed multiple times. So I just hope that it makes its new date.
Yeah, let's hope. The longer the wait, the more chance that you have another Switch situation where the next console is on the horizon. It's just like, oh, we've got this game coming out. Is it going to be coming out on both platforms? The longer you wait, the more chance that could happen. I don't think it'll happen.
That's another question.
I don't think they're going to be launching a new console at the start of next year. I think that the Switch is still running super well with so many games coming out. I think they have a longer window to keep the Switch going. I would wager 2024 is probably a good time for it. I think next year is a little bit too soon. There's just so many games that have been in the pipeline this year that it doesn't feel like things are starting to ramp down a little bit for the next console yet.
Metroid Prime 4 is that game. It is the cross-gen game.
That's true.
Totally. It's going to be on Switch and Switch 2. And I think this game makes it out a little bit before that. Probably a year. I mean, I wouldn't doubt March of 24 is when Switch 2 comes out. But hopefully this game doesn't get delayed again. There were graphics going around. And we're going to talk about delays more a little later in the show. But there were graphics going around of every mainline console Zelda game has been delayed. Like every single one. has been delayed, and it's just except Majora's Mask, but that was internally delayed, I believe, even still. So I really wanted to believe this wasn't going to be the one because it is in the same engine as Breath of the Wild, but the delay honestly excites me a little bit because it just means that there's so many new ideas that they want to flesh out in this game. And yeah, I trust that team that it's not delayed because it's in bad shape. It's delayed because there's just more they want to do before they decide they're done. And that's something Aonuma's always said about Zelda. He's like, the toughest thing about making Zelda is gauging when we're finished with it because there's always more they want to do. And I think that's just a super cool thing. It's not like a Cyberpunk situation where it's like this thing does not work.
We got to make it playable.
Yeah. So disappointing. It was my Nintendo prediction for 2022 was that it would make it. And I also said God of War would make it. So we'll see if I'm wrong on that one too.
They seem pretty confident that God of War is coming out this year. So
yeah.
I'll believe them.
Yeah. All right. So that is the huge Nintendo news of the week. Breath of the Wild 2 delayed. Hopefully a year from now, it's in our hands. I'm hoping March 3rd, 2023 would be pretty outstanding. All right. Let's talk about the May 3rd.
May 3rd.
They miss it.
That's so far away. Oh, man.
Yep.
All right, let's talk about the big PlayStation news, and that is PlayStation has announced its new subscription plans for PlayStation Plus. They didn't change the name. They're just calling it the new PlayStation Plus to compete with Game Pass. There are 3 tiers here. There is PlayStation Plus Essential, the same price as current PlayStation Plus plan, no price change. Still get an online service and a couple of free games a month. Then there's PlayStation Plus Extra, which adds 400 first and third-party PS4 and PS5 games, not including new first-party releases, so not like Game Pass Day 1, where you'll be able to play God of War Ragnarok right when it drops. That's $100 a year. They already announced some games that's coming with, including Returnal, so there are some big PS5 exclusives that are already beyond that service.
Spider-Man Miles Morales also on there as well,
yeah.
I believe.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Then there's PlayStation Plus Premium, which includes everything from both previous tiers and up to 340 PS1, PS2, PSP games through downloading and cloud gaming, and cloud-only PS3 gaming. This will also include game trials, which is something that we see on Xbox and Nintendo Switch Online. Also, no new releases, and this is $120 a year, $10 a month. Compared to Game Pass, that's $120 a year, but with Game Pass Ultimate, which gives you online play, that's $180 a year. So even the top of the shelf is still cheaper than Game Pass Ultimate. I'm going to start with you guys, Zach, big PlayStation guy. You've been on Game Pass for coming up on a year now. What do you think?
Oh my goodness, I've had this Xbox since like August. That is unbelievable to me. Where has the time gone? Yeah, I'm definitely happy with the pricing. I was worried that it was going to be ridiculous, but I think it's actually fairly reasonable. Having it cap out at $10 a month is honestly not that bad, especially given Game Pass, roughly was it $15 a month for the 180
Ultimate,
a year.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But you can always find it cheaper. Always, if you look.
The
Exactly,
$1 for the $1 for the first 3 months or something.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that on that side of things, it's actually pretty reasonable. I don't trust cloud gaming at all. I don't know if them being PS3 games affects the capability of which they could stream with a relatively okay internet connection. I don't know if you have to have great internet to stream even PS3 games. That's a little iffy for me, but the large library of PS4 games, PS2 games, PS1 games, and I believe PSP games will have a good amount of downloadable games. Yeah. So still a pretty good amount of games you can just download and play on your console. I'm definitely gonna check it out. The top tier for at least a year. Gauge how I'm feeling with it. See if there's a good amount of stuff that I want to go back and play. Whether it be old PS2, PS1 games. I don't know how much of the 400 odd PS4 games that I haven't played. I don't know which ones will pull my attention, but I think I'm going to lean harder into the PS2, PS1 era of games that I haven't played since I was very young, or games that I missed out on, or games that are now very expensive, which isn't a lot of the case with PS2 and PS1 games. Those ones are a lot more reasonable with their aged pricing, unlike Nintendo games. So that's not that big of a deal, but yeah, definitely gonna try it out. Happy with the pricing, hesitant about the cloud streaming. just excited to see the library that they go with, because it does seem like they're adding a lot of games.
Yeah, I'll just speak on the cloud stuff really quick because I've done Xbox cloud gaming on my phone with the little like grip for the controller that the phone clips onto. It's been
Yeah.
great. It's really good. I played Forza Horizon 5 and Halo Infinite online multiplayer through the cloud, and there's definitely a little bit of noticeable input delay, especially
Yeah.
for twitchy multiplayer game like Halo. But largely, it ran really well. I don't have experience with PS Now, but I think cloud gaming's gotten to a point where while it will never be a primary thing, at least for the moment, as a way to stream just select games, I think it's fine. But I wish you could download the PS3 games.
It's pretty
Yeah.
embarrassing that they still haven't figured that out. That was the big issue with PS Now. Was it
Yeah.
was like we don't know how to get PS3 games running on the PS4, so we'll just put them on PS Now and have you stream them. It it's pretty sad that they still haven't figured out how to do it, and that they seemingly really don't care anymore. That it's just like,
Yeah.
all right, cloud only.
At least they found
It's
a way to make it work.
I know the PS3 had really weird development architecture.
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
they totally started over with PS4. Still a problem, apparently, 16 years later.
I mean, yeah, it was a whole thing in that generation where it was such a pain to develop for that most games developed for Xbox 360 first. And then like, all right, let's try and port this thing over to PS3 with varying levels of quality.
Like
So,
Skyrim had horrible issues on PS3,
yeah.
for example,
So-
and on Xbox, but mostly on
but more
PS3.
so on PlayStation.
Yeah, but Kev, what do you think of the three tiers as a whole? This is exactly what was rumored and reported by Bloomberg months ago. So now that it's real, what do you think?
For me, I don't think it really moves the needle that much. I was never super interested in PS Now, and I feel like this is, in a very similar vein to that. I think this is opened up a bit more, and they're trying to tie it in with PlayStation Plus, which I think is a smart idea. Xbox has done well with Game Pass and tying that to Gold and the online service. But I take this as mainly a legacy content service, and I just don't have much nostalgia for a lot of these games. I didn't have a PS1. I played the PS2 sparingly growing up. I have a PS3, but didn't really play it too much. I was more on 360 at the time. And then PS4 is still very recent, and I played a lot of the games on there. So, there's not a big incentive to draw me in with those older games. And I feel like for Game Pass, the big selling point is those new games. Like that's why I think it's easier to swallow a more expensive $180 if you're getting Game Pass Ultimate, because you're like, well, that's just 3 big releases from that year that I play that I don't have to pay for, and it pays for it right there. There's the $180 from 3 $60 titles. But if you're not getting the day and date, it like, I know that they come eventually. It seems like a year or two later. So some of these games that have been out for at least a year or two on PS5 are going to be coming over, which is great. But I think that's such a big selling point for Game Pass Ultimate, especially for someone that doesn't have the nostalgic attachment to these old PlayStation properties, where without that, there's really not a whole lot that would that really interests me here. I'll also say with Xbox, they give you the option to buy the legacy content as well, right? Like you can purchase the 360 games and the original Xbox
you can buy
games.
to own those. Yeah,
Yeah.
And here, I don't know if they've said anything, but it seems like they are locked behind this service. I'm not sure if they have said either way, but that's another great thing about Xbox Game Pass is that it gives you incentive to purchase the games as well. They give you the discount, and they're all there, and they're all purchasable beyond the service. And it'd be a little bit disappointing coming here with all of these legacy content games that would just be stuck behind this service that you couldn't buy to own and download. Now they haven't said one way or the other, and it's not out yet, obviously. But that would be another thing that kind of irks me a little bit, is that there's no other way to play these games beyond doing the subscription service, like Nintendo with Switch Online. If you don't have Switch Online, those NES and Super Nintendo games and N64 games are not available to you on the Switch. So pricing is all right, $120 a year, but I think it's a bigger deal for people who are nostalgic for those old PlayStation consoles. Also, rip Vita. That the
I know,
PSP
yeah.
gets the support,
Yeah,
and
it
the
hurts.
Vita's just screwed.
Mhm.
Goodbye, Vita.
Yeah. Yeah, I pretty much land where you do, Kev. I think that this lands in kind of a weird no man's land for me and probably for a lot of people compared to NSO and Xbox Game Pass, where NSO is so cheap that you don't care that it sucks, and Game Pass
Yep.
is
Yep.
pricier, but those releases, those first party releases, day and date, like you said, make it. And Game Pass wasn't always that. It was kind of under the radar a service for a couple of years before they added the first party releases on day one, and then it blew up into what it is now. But that is what makes it for me. Totally. And then to have this be $120 a year, but I'm not getting the new releases, it's like that's just not worth it for me, because who has the time to go back and play these old back catalog games? Even like when you're talking about time opportunity sink, it's like we talk about how busy this year is and how many things there are to play all the time. I look at my use of Game Pass. Yes, Zach and I played Gears of War 1 and abandoned Gears 2, but the
And you got to
bulk
play
of
Bug
my
Fables this
time,
year.
yes, which is there also, but the bulk of my time on Game Pass is new releases. Forza Horizon 5 and Halo Infinite are by far what I spent the most time playing on Game Pass since I got my Xbox almost a year ago. And so I look at something like PlayStation Plus Premium and I'm like, yeah, I already pay 60 to play PlayStation Online. I'm not going to pay another 60 to access these games I'm just not going to play. And I think that is why I'm excited to see where this service evolves, both from a personal standpoint and just from a wider interest standpoint. But right now, unless you're a super hardcore PlayStation fan, I don't see the reason to upgrade. I just don't see it. Like Returnal a year later, it's like, well, I could have spent that 60 on Returnal when it was new, like instead of upgrading to pay for it a year later. And yeah, you might save money in the long run, but if you're a hardcore enough fan to fork over $120 a year just for a subscription service, you're probably already buying those games when they're new. Like you're probably already picking a lot of those up well before they would actually come to this service. So I think it's kind of weird. It feels a little cobbled together. Like, man, people really want an answer from us for Xbox Game Pass. What is Sony's version of Game Pass? So it feels like they just like kind of stripped the PlayStation Now name from the premium tier, which PlayStation Now was about $50 a year at this point. So it's just totally merged in premium and they just changed the name. And then this new library of PS4 and PS5 is like, it's just not doing it for me. So it feels weak right now, but Game Pass wasn't great when it came out either. So this is something that could definitely grow and change over time.
Yeah, I don't doubt that it will grow and change over time, but I really don't think Sony is going to ever do day and date releases like Xbox did.
No.
I think Xbox was in a very precarious place when this came out, where they're like, all right, this is all we have, and we gotta put all of our chips into this. Whereas with Sony, they've been running along just fine, and people buy their first party games and they're all really well received. I don't think they see the incentive to put them on the service now or even in the future. I don't think that's ever going to happen. Will the library expand and maybe Vita games will be added at some point, or just, the expansion of the library? I don't doubt that, but I do think that the biggest draw of Game Pass in the new releases is never going to come to this service ever.
I agree.
But I do think it's smart that they're rebranding it, because PlayStation Now, most people didn't know what it was. So I think that tying it into PlayStation Plus, that people know what that is, a good majority of the players have it to play online, and just kind of tying it in as part of that, I think is a much smarter move, at the very least in branding. But yeah, I don't think I'm going to be picking this up.
Yeah. So those are the two big stories of the week. Real quick, before we get into our rumor roundup, Fast and Furious Crossroads is being delisted on April 29th of this year. So you got a month to pick it up. This game came out August 2020. It is notoriously terrible. It does feature the cast of the Fast and Furious movies, but it's apparently just an awful, glitchy mess of a game. We've joked about it a few times. Rise of Shifter is another Fast and Furious game. I wonder about its shelf life now. I'm supposed to play that this year. It's on my list of games to beat in
yeah.
2022 as a joke. But yeah, this is bizarre. It's like, all right, no one bought it. It's terrible. And now you can't.
Yeah, that is such a quick plug. Less than 2 years, and the game is already
Mhm.
gone. Like, I don't think we've seen that very often, if ever. But the game is terrible, and I don't think anybody's really buying it. I think that when
No.
the game first came out, no one really bought it, and then some people on YouTube played it and were like, wow, this is one of the worst games I have ever played. And then you had some people who are morbidly curious try it out, and then after that, no one buys it. So I think that they're probably just like, all right, there's no point in keeping this up on the store. But at the same time, as bad as the game is, it is still kind of sad to see these things just wiped off of storefronts. But
yeah,
it is a terrible game from what I've heard.
Yeah, I don't know. My first inclination when I heard it was going away is like, well, now I gotta buy it. But do I have to buy it though?
Is it still full price?
I would never pay.
They do a blowout sale for like $3.
More than $10, yeah.
You know, I think that would get some people in to just be like, "What is this?"
Yeah, sell it for $1. Get as much as you can get out of it, and then just take it away.
Yeah. Goodbye, Fast and Furious Crossroads.
Yeah.
Goodbye. It was too short. Too short. Gone too soon.
Apparently, the game itself was also too short. There's no content in there.
I want to get into our rumor roundup for the week, our Sonic Frontiers weekly segment, because there's actually some real news this week, not really related directly to Sonic Frontiers, but something that we could eventually get details from, and that is, did either of you guys see that Tails is now a YouTube star?
I did see some weird video on my Twitter.
I did not see that.
He's got a new series called Tails Tube, which is an online show about all things Sonic. And there was already the first episode where
Tails should we sue him? Do we have to sue
Tails talking about Quillen?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, but they are talking about lore. The first episode went up and it mostly was talking about lore. Sonic addressed his relationship status with Amy. They confirmed that who's going to be dead in the new game. They confirmed that the Sonic characters share a world with humanity rather than living in a world of their own, which I guess
we kind of knew that.
Yeah, the president. He had the photo of his
Elise.
Sonic.
Yeah, Elise. Yep, that's a good one. Unleashed even has some humans.
Unleashed has a crap ton of humans. Yeah.
Is he?
Yeah.
I don't know what he does.
So they confirmed that, even though they've moved away from that a little bit. Besides Eggers, there haven't really been humans in the games recently.
Oh yeah,
like Forces doesn't have any people. It also doesn't have any content. But people are hoping that we could end up getting some Sonic Frontiers details through this Tails Tube channel. So I just thought it kind of harkened back to when they were like, new news every month for Sonic. This kind of feels like that too. Don't really know what it's going to end up being, but hopefully we can get some Frontiers news from it, because it has been radio silent on that game for the last 3.5 months. We don't know anything about it, and it's supposedly coming out before the end of the year.
They're going to pull the same thing where they're like, oh, Tails is going to be launching a new video every month, and then the channel just dies.
Not a single video.
He doesn't do a video ever again. It's like, oops.
I feel like the two games that we thought were most likely to be delayed this year were Zelda and this. So, and one of them's been delayed. Curious to see if Sonic makes it in 2022. But yeah, I mean, Sonic always does really fun stuff on social media and YouTube. So this is just kind of a cool thing to present a news channel with Tails. I think it's cute, even if it is just kind of useless lore information that doesn't dive into any new announcements.
But that is the useless lore information that we need to know. We need to expand our knowledge of the Sonic world. As members of Sonic Club, it's very important.
Yes. Yep. We have to be well informed.
But that's the rumor roundup, and that is the news.
Wait, that was the rumor? The rumor is that there's a...
Sometimes our rumors are very much just not rumors.
They're just facts, and they're not even about the game.
Last week we were talking about the Xbox. That is not a rumor at all.
This is not a rumor, and it's not about Frontiers. It's about the movie. Also, I've heard that the movie's coming out next week. It's hot rumor right now. That the movie's
I feel like I heard that somewhere. I heard that on the Tails YouTube show.
The Tails, he was talking about the shadow drop of the movie.
Yeah.
The silver drop?
Oh, yeah. I get it.
Thanks.
Oh. Anyways.
is that it for the news?
That's it. I'm done.
All right. That's gonna do it for this week's rumor roundup. We'll now be moving on to, I guess, what I've been playing, because I think according to the document, all you two have been playing is Kirby, and you
I
already
have
talked about
taken a
that for like
break
an hour.
from
Yeah.
Horizon. I will say I went to an art museum in Miyagi Prefecture that was doing a feature on the Zelda manga, which was very interesting.
That's cool.
So they had a bunch of
That's
original
pretty cool.
art and blurbs from the authors, which I didn't know is a pen name for two people, which is very interesting. But yeah, just a little note that was really cool. Just
I
to
thought
go
you were
and see a lot
gonna
of
say
this art and stuff.
I thought you were gonna say that you went to a museum in Horizon Forbidden West, and I was like, "There's a museum in that game," but no,
maybe
a real life
side thing.
museum.
But yeah,
Okay.
beyond Kirby and Stardew, of course, that's really all I've been doing.
I've really wanted to read the Zelda manga, but just never been able to get into it.
I read-
It looks really neat.
Yeah, some of the art was really, really impressive. And I was also impressed with just the level of English support, because sometimes you go to these things and there's really not a whole lot. And so you just work through with whatever Japanese knowledge you have. But they translated everything. And
That's cool.
there was copies of the English versions. They did they did side by sides with like different copies of the books from different languages. So you could kind of compare, which is interesting. And they just showed off all the different series, starting with Ocarina and then going through. They've done them on most of the games, and they had a section for each one. So yeah, quite
That's
interesting.
There was a special one shot that came out around the time of Skyward Sword, I think, that detailed the origins of the first Link in Zelda that I read, and it was really good. It was just like a special one shot that was only like a chapter's length, but it was
Is
interesting.
it
Was
like
he
the one that's
shackled
in Hyrule
in that?
Historia?
I don't know. I don't remember. I think I read it online, but yeah, it was just like the origins of the hero and the princess. So I don't remember what it was called, but it was pretty cool. So check that out. I don't know anything else about any of the other Zelda mangas.
Link talks in all of them, which is weird.
That's unbelievable.
That'd be
I wonder
really hard to do that
what
without
voice-
him talking.
What voice do you hear in your head? Because I don't.
I don't know.
I don't know. Yeah.
Maybe that's why I've
Make
never
up your
gotten
own.
him. So I just can't.
Can't
Feel
do it.
My
right.
voice. I'm Link.
But yeah, Zach, what have you been up to?
I have beaten Elden Ring, which is
Woo!
an achievement, because not only is that game hard, but it's pretty long. I haven't gone off the deep end like many people, having put 100 and some odd hours into it. I only put 50 hours into it, and I beat it around the 50-hour mark, more like 48, 49, is when I decided to go in to the final boss. I had gotten to the final boss earlier, but I decided to go do some other stuff before wrapping up. This game is clear game of the year. Absolutely fantastic. Loved every second of it. Did a bunch. I feel like there was so much left to do. Even having put 50 hours into it and exploring as much as I could. There's just a bunch of stuff that I have heard other people talking about that I have no idea. And some bosses that I still am unable to beat, and a bunch of stuff that I just haven't done. So I'm definitely am not finished playing Elden Ring, but I have technically beaten the game. Once you've beaten the game, it offers up New Game Plus, but you don't have to take it up on the offer, because when you do New Game Plus, the enemies get harder, and they do more damage, and they have more health, but you also gain more runes since it's harder to level up, since you're probably pretty high level when you do beat the game. But if you're still wanting to just stay in your current world with the current level of boss, and things, you don't want things to get super crazy, you can do that instead. That's what I opted to do, because I still wanted to go around and not fight, because there's this notoriously impossible boss that I tried to beat like 30 times, still haven't done it. I
What's
didn't
her
even
name?
want to Melania, Blade of
I've heard
Mikola.
that.
Yeah, she is unbelievably difficult, and I don't even want to imagine what she's like on New Game Plus if I can't beat her on base game. So once I beat her on base game, then I'll think about New Game Plus. But I really wanted to go through the effort of platinuming this game, because when I looked at it, the platinum was fairly high for a platinum, like hovering around 5%, which is pretty good for a platinum
Especially a
trophy.
month after a launch.
Yeah,
pretty quick.
absolutely.
That's
And-
crazy.
And a lot of people picked it up too. So that's a
Yeah.
wide swath of people.
But the weird thing about it is that you have to beat this game 3 times to get the platinum trophy. You need to get all 3 endings, and you can't just like go back and beat the boss immediately. You still have to go through the whole game, even if you do New Game Plus.
That means 5%
Well, could you
of
save
players
scum
have
to
played it
get all
at
3
least
endings?
3 times. Man.
No, you can't save scum because it saves automatically after you beat it.
Ooh.
Yeah, you cannot.
Man.
I don't know if there's a way to cheese it, but you have to beat this game 3 times in order to get the platinum, and a lot of people have the platinum, which means there's a lot of people putting, and this is what I've been seeing, and I knew this was the case, but people are sinking hundreds of hours into this game. They are just going, and the New Game Plus scales up to like 7 times, so you can do New Game plus 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 plus,
Jesus.
which is insane.
What is that?
Because I think the max level is like 700 something, because you can get
Mhm.
every stat up to 99. And I think you would need millions of runes to level up at that point. So the scaling probably gets pretty crazy. I don't think I'll ever try
That
and
seems
max
a
out a
little
character.
much.
I think if I were to go for the platinum, I would just make new characters and start fresh, as opposed to doing New Game Plus, because I would try
Mhm.
different builds and stuff. But
And it could also be a more long-term thing. You know, you set it down for a while, and
Yeah,
if you get an itch to
absolutely.
play through it again, you
Yeah.
go back in for that second playthrough and try and get the different endings.
after
Not
having
just do
beaten
in
it,
a month.
I've definitely slowed down on playing it. I do want to get all the trophies for beating the different bosses, like the main bosses, just to experience all the different boss fights. Those are the coolest part. I love fighting the bosses. They're super cool. Yeah, and like I said, this game absolutely blew me away. Still tons to explore at the 50-hour mark. There's just it's mind-boggling. Like, what is next? You can really have the freedom to choose how you want to do it, whether you want to go into New Game Plus, whether you want to just start over, fresh build. Yeah, really, the options are crazy, and loved every second of it. Loved all the exploring. There were definitely my biggest issue with the game, and they're clearly working on this because patches are coming out, but there was a lot of scaling and balance issues with some of the bosses being too hard, some of the builds being a little too broken, and they're slowly figuring out, what's overpowered, who's too strong. We got to make these bosses weaker. We got to make these bosses stronger. We need to make these weapons weaker. And it helps that there's millions of best build videos on YouTube.
They could check it out and be like,
Oh
all right,
yes,
need to
you
change
need this sword and this rune, and you can.
I gotta finish the game before they nerf my sword, man.
Yeah,
Gotta get
it
on
was
that.
rough. Yeah, because as soon as I got like the most overpowered Spirit Ash, like the day after he got nerfed, and it was a little devastating.
Be interesting though, like, playing it on launch and having these certain ways that you play the game, and then you come back maybe a year later and it's like a
It's
completely different thing.
yeah.
Whatever you did that first time
Mhm.
might not work.
It's messing with the
is
speedrun community a lot.
Kind of
Yeah,
crazy.
I actually watched a glitch filled speed run of this game in 18 minutes, and they played it on the original patch. They can't do it on the new patch anymore. But yeah, he was just doing this weird pose to teleport places, and I was like, all right, I don't even understand speedrunners at this point. What's the point?
Stuff's crazy.
Yeah.
I know, but it's fascinating to watch because they can break these games.
The things people figure out sometimes is just wild. Also,
Yeah.
the amount of time someone can play the same game over and over and over again on these speedruns is also wild to me.
I know. How many times do you have to play these games to figure that stuff out?
Yeah,
crazy.
totally.
Yeah, definitely slowing down on the pace of play, but I can see myself slowly playing through this game a couple more times over the next couple of years, slowly working my way towards that platinum, testing a bunch of other stuff out. They're adding, with each batch, they're even adding stuff like different character quests and side stuff, and there's so much left to do. So this game's got a long shelf life, which I can really appreciate. So definitely we'll be talking more about that in the future as I discover more and as Logan progresses through it. And that's another reason for me to keep playing, is to help Logan through some of the difficult challenges that I had to
Yeah.
overcome by myself. because I zoomed past.
Yep.
I zoomed past. I went too hard, too fast.
Yeah, I am still playing it, but I'm visiting my parents this week, so I'm away from my PlayStation, so I haven't been able to play for the last week or so, and I'm worried I'm gonna just be terrible at it when I pick it back up.
Yeah, and
We'll see.
it is unbelievable that I am just discovering mechanics, like core mechanics in this game.
what?
After I beat it. I went back to the first guy you talked to. He was gone, but he left a message saying where he would be. So I went to go talk to him, and he gave me a finger that I can use to invade other worlds. And that was after I had beaten the game. And then I saw a YouTube video entitled "How to Give Your Friends Items in Elden Ring." I was like, okay, you can just go into your friend's world and drop your like most overpowered sword and just give it to them, and they can just have it forever. And I'm like, that's something we were talking about wanting in Monster Hunter. Yeah, you can't give your friend something that you've upgraded more than the highest thing they have upgraded. So if your highest thing is like plus 13, I can't give you a plus 14. It has to be at most plus 13. So there is some balance there. It's not completely broken, but it's still pretty crazy, especially since you can dual wield any weapon in this game, given the stats.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just so much. It's overwhelming, but in the best way possible. So I kind of want, this game was obviously inspired by the Breath of the Wild, and now I want Breath of the Wild 2 to be. So I want it to be just so much like this. This is.
I don't think you're gonna get it as brutal as
no,
as
definitely not.
But
definitely not like that. But just the vast expanses to explore. It's just,
we talk about the underground. Elden Ring has so many underground areas. We talked about going underground in Zelda. It's like, yeah, that's what that should be.
That's what we want.
Totally.
Yep. Although in Elden Ring you just find a random elevator, it just seems a little out of place, and you just and you just go down for like a minute. But
I mean, that's all that Zelda was. Shrines all have elevators down to them.
That's a good point.
All the exploration work there.
Into that, yeah.
And then other than that, I started Ace Attorney 5. Yes.
Yep.
Sorry, I had to think about it. I've played a lot of Ace Attorneys. Took a side track on the Miles Edgeworth ones, but yep, Dual Destinies. Ace Attorney 5 started it, going into it knowing it's not the strongest Ace Attorney game. The upsides, I love the animated cutscenes. Those were a surprise to me. I didn't know that Ace Attorney started doing that. They're completely voice acted. They're at the beginning of the cases and sometimes in the middle of the case, and then at the end of the case. So a good amount of actually cinematics thrown into these games. The sprite animations are more fluid now that they're not like hand drawn. They're more CG animated. So those are pretty cool. And I like the new girl attorney, Athena. I think she's pretty cool. And then other than that, I hated the first case. I did not like it at all. I thought it was stupid. I thought it was obvious, and I thought it was boring. So hopefully it gets better.
Nice way to start.
Yep. I only played the first case. But I was not a fan, and it's not even the worst first case. I still hate the first case from Justice for All more.
That one is stupid.
That one sucks so hard.
As they come.
Yep. But I think this one's a real contender for worst first case. Also, like, I know Logan has this big complaint, but the character Phoenix Wright really reverts back to how he was prior to the fourth game. He got a lot of character development in the time skip from the third game to the fourth game, and then he just goes back. And this game like changes up the main character from the fourth game a lot. Like, he's like a completely different person. He's like what Phoenix Wright should be in this game. He's just like cool and everyone's fawning over him, and I'm like, that should just be Phoenix Wright, and they should have just swapped their like character arcs.
Oh, that would have been cool.
Yeah, that's like my first thought. I'm like, this should be Phoenix and Apollo should be where Phoenix is. So that would have been really cool, but I don't know if that would have made then they should just made this Apollo 2. So I don't know.
Yeah.
This is like, I don't know when this game came out, but it's long past. So complaining about the
Oh
story.
wow, it's almost
Gotta-
10 years old. I'm now realizing that's
Ooh.
crazy.
Is it that old?
Wow.
I did not think it was that old.
Came out in 2013. Yeah.
Oh my god, that's so old.
Mhm.
I had no idea.
9 years ago.
Mhm.
My goodness, yeah. Definitely hoping it gets better. But yeah, those are my big complaints so far. But I love that they have voice acted animated cutscenes. One of my big I'm a big fan of Sam Riegel, who voices Phoenix Wright, which was a nice surprise because I didn't know he did that. So it was super cool to see. Yeah, just really hoping it gets better. But I know it's going to be low on my tier list. I just hope it's not terrible. That's all you can hope
passable.
for. Yeah, I just hope
You have a fine time.
I just got to get to the Great Ace Attorney. That's all I need to do.
You do.
Hey, 6 is
a great
great
game.
also. 6 is a great game.
That's good. Oh, and I was able to buy the DLC cases because you have to start the game.
You
and,
do.
like,
I thought that was weird.
yeah,
I had to start
so
all
I had-
of them when I bought them just to buy it.
I started 6 Spirit of Justice, and I had to watch the opening cutscene just so I could buy the DLC case. So I was trying not to pay too much attention so I could like forget about it.
It was really weird how they did that, where it's the DLC is not available in the eShop.
No,
and
I
you have
looked
to
everywhere in
start
the store,
the
and then I was
game
like,
before it
"It's not
gives you
here."
the option. It's really weird.
Yeah.
But I guess it was.
I guess they didn't plan for the 3DS shop to
3DS,
go down at some point. So I'm glad I was able to pick those up. There was also like weird DLC costumes that you can swap. I bought them all. I'm weak. I bought everything.
Wow, I mean the costumes are only $1. I was looking what
There was also like
the final game was like the extra little
there was
scenes or
something-
something.
yeah, there was like
Oh, those are so bad. Oh, those are
I bought 'em.
terrible.
I bought them all.
I mean, good. You got them forever now, but they're
Yeah.
terrible.
I didn't even know
Yeah.
what they were, but I bought them.
Yeah.
Didn't
It's
know they're
bad.
Yeah.
All right, do we want to get into a quick ode to? We were talking about this earlier.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about game delays for a little bit. We were talking about Zelda earlier in the show and its
Mhm.
delay to next year. With this, we just wanted to talk a bit about our thoughts surrounding delays and what they mean to you in terms of what you expect from the game when it eventually comes out.
Yeah.
If you see the delay and you're like, oh man, like, what is this game going to be? Or is it, it's delayed, like, maybe that means it's going to be a lot better. So I'll start
Yeah.
with Logan first, and any notable delays that you remember wading through in your past experience, if you have them. What are your thoughts surrounding delays, and how does it change your opinion on a lot of these games if they get delayed?
It just depends on the publisher. I mean, we mentioned Nintendo earlier. It's like when they delay a game, I don't worry about it.
Mhm.
But when like CD Projekt Red delays Cyberpunk, I worry
Yeah,
about it.
Yeah.
And another developer of that pedigree, like when The Last of Us 2 suffered like 3 delays, didn't worry about it at all. Like that game is gonna be great when it comes out, and it was. But so yeah, I just really think it depends on who's making this game. Like Ubisoft delays a game, like oh god, like what is Skull and Bones at this point? What is that game? Beyond Good and Evil 2 has dropped off the face of the earth for like the 4th time. Like these are
I forgot
games that
about
I don't think are coming out, and I don't think would be good if they did come out. So yeah, it all depends on kind of the context of the delay. But Zelda is just expected at this point. Like Tropical Freeze was delayed. That game turned out great. Advance Wars just was delayed for global
Yeah.
politic reasons. Still
That was
hoping
already
comes out sometime
that was
this
already
year.
delayed once before, right?
It was, yeah, it was already
Mhm.
delayed. It was supposed to come out in December, but it looked a lot better when it was re-revealed. If you remember at the direct when it was announced with its April date, it looked great. Like that game looked. It had the multiplayer modes people wanted. It had different like create a map modes from the older games, so that one looked like it got the time it needed. And then for the like most notable delay I had to endure was The Last of Us is what comes to mind instantly, because right at the start of the pandemic, they delayed it indefinitely, and it only turned out to be a few weeks. But that was like, man, when are we going to get to play this thing? And then Zelda is always notable. Like Breath of the Wild, it took forever to get that game. And then Smash for Wii U was delayed a couple times, and that one felt like a really long wait also, and turned out being great. But Breath of the Wild 2 joins that list now of notable delays for me. Where I'm like, man, it's disappointing, but honestly, it did make me more excited for the game, like we talked about before.
Yeah, I do think it depends on developer pedigree a lot. There are some developers where it's like, oh God, they've delayed this game. What is what is that going to be?
Yeah.
Especially when
Didn't
they delay a game and they've barely shown it off at all, and you're just like, what is this? What is this game?
yeah. Didn't Uncharted 4 get delayed a bunch, Zach?
Yeah,
I
Zach,
was
you wanna
actually
talk
just
about
reading
your
about it because I couldn't remember the
experiences with delays?
exact delay, and it's actually
Uh-huh.
not as bad as I remember. But I had been waiting for this game for 5 years, so any delay kind of stung. But it only got delayed from March 2016 to May 2016,
Oh, that's not bad.
so
Yeah.
that's really not that bad. It just felt pretty rough at the time. But yeah, the big one that does come to mind is Last of Us Part 2, of course, and also I was kind of bummed when Animal Crossing New Horizons got delayed. Yeah.
Mm.
But like you said, Nintendo's got that pedigree. They're just making it better. They're just adding more stuff.
I guess
How
that
you
is
feel
the
about
thing
Sports
where-
Story?
Sports Story, it hasn't been delayed because it's never coming out.
It was supposed to come out summer 2020. It's a multi-year delay at this
which
point.
is hilarious. Work
Oh,
is
yeah, I
ongoing.
didn't even
They're
remember
starting
that.
at the baby court.
Mhm.
Yep.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, that one's a little bit harder because on the one hand, I loved Golf Story and I have faith that they can make a good game, but on the other hand, they've only made one game and
Yeah.
um with a lot of indie studios, I think between games, I feel like it can ramp up a lot and maybe it's something that they might not be as prepared for as they thought. Um
Mhm.
and that's what they've been saying about Sports Story is that they had like all of these ideas that they wanted to put into the game and it's like, well, the scope has expanded, which is better than the game doesn't work and we're struggling to implement some of these features, but I feel like sometimes they can scale up for some of these smaller developers. Valhalla, the sequel to that, has been delayed indefinitely as well. That was supposed to come out
Mm.
last year, and now they're just saying it's going to be coming out when it's ready. I think with indie studios, sometimes that sequel or that next game can be a bigger undertaking.
But then there's indie games like Mighty Number 9, which was delayed like 3 times and then was horrible.
Yeah.
It was just a mess when it came out.
Yeah.
What about
As
Kingdom
for
Hearts
me,
3?
what?
Kingdom
Hearts 3?
Hearts, just in general.
Eventually. I don't even. That one was in development for a long time. I don't know if it ever got official release date before it got.
Okay.
I think the release date might have always been in January. I don't know if it ever had a official release date before that.
It just
you
took
know,
a million years to come
Yeah,
out.
it just took
Yeah.
so
Over a
long
decade.
to come out. Yeah.
Yeah.
They announced it way too far ahead of time.
That's yeah. Game developers need to stop doing that. Like we were talking about last week with CD Projekt Red. Why? Why did you decide to talk about Witcher now?
I know.
You're still trying
Oh my
to fix
God.
Cyberpunk.
That game
The
is so
DLC for
far
that
out.
Isn't even out yet. The DLC for Cyberpunk isn't out. The Witcher 3's next gen, current gen version that's not even out yet, right?
Not yet. Nope.
Like, why? After seeing the whole debacle with Cyberpunk and how you announced that so far in advance, why would you do that again? I think that sets up a game to have a lot more issues down the line, possibly with delays as well. When people start getting antsy, and then you're trying to shove it out the door, and it's like we just can't do that. We got to delay it a couple of times, and then even after you delay it, it's a mess.
Yeah.
Just give us some time. We don't need to know them right away.
Yeah, even in an age where you can fix and patch and repair a broken game, if you release it too far ahead of time and it comes out broken, you can patch it. But something like Cyberpunk's always going to have that stigma of being a broken piece of garbage when it came out.
I
It's
feel
tarnished forever.
No Man's Sky is in a similar
76,
position.
No Man's Sky, all of those games will always be the games that came out broken, no
Right,
matter how
and-
good they are now.
Yeah, even No Man's Sky, which has turned it around significantly, and people love that game now. For people who aren't playing it now, who were hearing about it when it came out, the prevailing thought is, "Oh, that was that that broken game that had so many like over promises that didn't come to fruition," and that is the thought that is going to be surrounding that game, no matter how good it gets. And Cyberpunk's going to be the same way, of just this massive flop after all of this hype was built, even if in 3 or 4 years time when all the DLC is out, it's actually a very good game. Deservedly so, though, because they decided to launch it in a completely broken state. But
Mhm.
yeah, as for me, it is the same thought of depends on the developer. Some are like, well, it sucks. I'm I'm sad about it, but at the same time, you have faith in them that this is necessary to get the game to where they want it to be and where it'll be a better experience for you. The one that I'm going through now is Saints Row. That got delayed, and I am very concerned about that game because they don't have that pedigree. And the last game they made, Agents of Mayhem, was such a big flop that, you're worried about it. And they haven't made a Saints Row game and coming up on 10 years. I think Saints Row 4 came out in 2013 or so, somewhere around there, 2012, 2013. So when it's been that long and the foundation has been a little bit shaky on the last couple of games, you do kind of worry about, is it, oh, we want to add in more stuff, or is it like, oh, it's in a rough shape right now and we're just trying to get it to a point where it's playable and just so that we can release it. With some of these other developers, that's the concern, not just, oh, we want to add in more stuff and kind of tighten things up. It's like, oh, we got to make this game work. So yeah, but I think they're necessary.
There's a lot of games coming out this year that were supposed to last year. Ragnarok was supposed to come out last year. Remember those days back when no one believed them when they said that? Final Fantasy 15, it was supposed to come out last year, and we've still
16?
heard absolutely 16. Yeah, 16 was supposed to come out last year. We still heard absolutely nothing about that. And then Suicide Squad was just delayed. Yeah, there's a ton of games that have been pushed. Just a very common thing now, and it's like, I think the announcement of a date and then a delay is worse than just waiting to announce the date and then getting it right. Like it is just more disappointing to have a day you're looking forward to pushed back than just having to wait longer to hear the release date. And so I know there's shareholder reasons, but it just feels like a mistake.
One of the weird things about being an adult with a job is I marked off like Sunbreak weekend on my calendar because I'm taking Friday off for Sunbreak weekend. But if it gets delayed, well, now I got to go to work on that day. Like that's a big problem for me. So these delays are really affecting me.
Yeah, that's a good point.
But they are necessary to some extent. Sometimes that was the difference between a really good and a really bad game, and sometimes the game's going to be bad regardless. But at the very least, the delays get them in a better state than where they were beforehand. But I do think that developers need to look a little bit further ahead and not just be like, all right, we need to announce this game now and we need to have a release window now. And then it's like, oh crap, we're not going to be able to hit that and we got to delay it again. Give it a little bit. Obviously it's not going to be perfect and there would still be delays, but I feel like sometimes it's just too trigger happy on showing stuff off.
Yeah.
And that you don't need to show off. But
Breath of the Wild 2 got announced in 2019.
Sometimes you make a mistake and sometimes you're painted into a corner where it's like you were talking about with Nintendo earlier, where it's like, we have nothing. Yeah. And this is it. So we have to show this off or we have nothing. I feel like Xbox is sometimes in that situation where they've got all of these new studios making games and it's just like, we got to show off Fable even though we got no gameplay and we got nothing else to show for it.
Or like BioWare showing off Mass Effect and Dragon Age, and it's like, God, when is either one of these actually coming out?
Yeah.
Like those were announced 2 years ago each at this point.
Nothing.
And they're nowhere in sight. And it's just baffling.
Remember when we first saw Dragon Quest 12? That got announced. Where is that?
Yeah. That was like a year ago.
Or any of the Dragon Quest stuff that was announced there, besides the offline mode, because that's Japan only. That got delayed. Got delayed to summer.
I want to play Dragon Quest 10.
But yeah, even the Pixel remaster.
Where's that?
Is MIA right now.
Yeah.
So just gotta wait. That's the name of the game. Waiting for delays, waiting for launches. All right. Any final thoughts before we wrap up for this week?
I bought another 3DS game.
Oh, what do we got this week?
Mario and Luigi Paper Jam.
Hey, you jumped in too.
Yeah, it was on Marketplace for $20.
Ooh, that's a great deal for that.
Yeah. And I was like, why not at that point? So jumped on it. Paper Jam.
My copy of Paper
Zach
Jam,
showing it
a
off.
It was
possibly
literally right there at the
Garbo
top of the
game.
stack. Sorry, I had to.
Yo, Paper Mario, what happened? What happened? Zach, anything from you?
I'm sorry that I wasn't here for the announcement of Witcher 4. I was very excited.
Yeah, quick thoughts on that. Too early to show it off.
I don't know if you guys talked about this, but they went out of their way to say that they're no longer using their in-house engine, Red Engine.
We talked about
They're
that,
doing
yeah.
Unreal, and I think that's so funny that they got spooked by Cyberpunk into licensing a different engine, because that's so expensive, and they're losing a lot of money doing that. But they're also really mitigating their risk, and I think it's a smart move given the horrible launch of Cyberpunk.
Yeah, that's probably a good decision. Did you also see like the guy being like, "Oh, we're not going to have crunch because I worked on Gwent and there was no crunch on there," and it's like, I mean, like,
right.
great that you didn't have crunch
That's a
on
card
Gwent.
game.
Like, that's awesome. But Gwent
Which,
is
if it's
very
even
different
true.
than an entire. Well, yeah, I don't know for sure, but Gwent and The Witcher are very different projects.
Yep.
What's your prediction for when you're going to be playing it, Zach?
I just
What
hope
year?
I'm alive. It's
2027.
God, it
Is
feels
it
like
going to
that's
be
not
on
so
PS6?
unreasonable. It 2027.
One song for PS5.
Oh God! Is
Honestly,
it the same thing. They do Cyberpunk to a T. Announce it like 8 years in advance.
I don't
and
think
then
we
scoot it in at the tail
hear
end.
another word about it until 2024. I don't think we're gonna hear another word about Witcher until like 2024.
I think that's fair because they're still working on current gen Witcher 3 and the Cyberpunk DLC. And
I don't believe they're working. I don't believe it's CD Projekt that's working on the Witcher upgrade. I think they outsourced that. Or the Witcher upgrade. I think they outsourced that to a different studio.
Still working on Cyberpunk though.
Cyberpunk DLC.
And fixes.
And fixing it.
That I'm sure is still going on.
Yeah.
All right, that is going to do it for us on this week's episode of Ode to Games. We're here on Thursdays or Fridays, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, odetogames.com. YouTube version is up at the Ode to Games YouTube page, so you can check that out there. We're on Twitter at Ode to Games. You can send an email to odegames@gmail.com. For Logan and Zach, I'm Kevin. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll catch you next week.